So what we're doing today is, it's kind of the reverse of what we did last week. Last week we talked about that if we knew that we had parallel lines, then we had some theorems that said then certain angles were congruent. Well, the work this week says that the converse of those theorems is also true. And what that means is that last week we said that if we have two parallel lines cut by a transversal, then alternate interior angles are congruent. This week, the converse of that says that if two alternate interior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. So it's just kind of, last week we went forward, this week we're going backwards. Okay? So down below the problem sets that you copied, these are the angle pairs that we know something about. Go ahead and just jot those down so you have them. Remember, corresponding angles are congruent. Alternate interior and alternate exterior are congruent. Consecutive interior and consecutive exterior have a sum, or they add to 180 degrees. So the converse of each of these is just, it's using the same name, it's just using this information. If this information is true, then the lines are for sure parallel. Now let's look back at what these problems are going to actually ask us to do. It says, determine if line L is parallel to line M based on the information in the diagram. If yes, state the reason that proves that the lines are parallel. So basically what that's saying is, look at the picture. What kind of angles were we given information about? What type of angles are these? Those ones that we just wrote down below. Alternate exterior. And alternate exterior angles are supposed to be congruent, right? Are these congruent? Yes. So that means yes, the lines are parallel. Because they're alternate exterior angles and alternate exterior angles are congruent, that tells us, yes, these lines have to be parallel. And those little arrows on there mean that those are parallel. So number 2, what kind of special angle pair are these angles right here? They're corresponding. I'm abbreviating. And what do you know about corresponding angles? If we have parallel lines, they should be equal or congruent, right? Are they congruent? Yes. So that means these lines then do, in fact, have to be parallel. Okay, what about number 3? So these angles are what type of angles? Same side, exterior. We also call them consecutive exterior, right? Go either way. Now those angles are supposed to do what? Are they supposed to be equal to each other or add to 180? Add to 180. So do they? They do, right? So that means that these lines are in fact parallel. So kind of if we can test that they are congruent when they're supposed to be, then that means they're parallel. Or if we can test that they do add to 180 when that's what they're supposed to do, then we know the lines were parallel. Okay. So let's look at these ones. 4, 5, and 6. So number 4, we have two congruent angles, but what type of angles are those? Vertical. Do vertical angles have anything to do with telling us that the lines are parallel? Or do we have to have parallel lines in order for vertical angles to be congruent? No, because vertical angles only require two intersecting lines. They don't require anything about a third line that would be parallel, right? So what this is asking is this line parallel to this line based on just this information? No. That second line or third line up there could be sitting at any angle, right? It could be parallel, but it could not be. It could be like really at a much greater angle. So no, there's nothing in this picture to say that those lines are parallel. Vertical angles doesn't tell us that lines are parallel. Vertical angles are congruent, but it doesn't mean anything about another line would be parallel. Okay, what kind of angles are number 5? Alternate interior. And they should be congruent, right? Are they congruent? Yeah, they're marked congruent, right? So that means yes, they are congruent. And yes, that would be enough to say that these parallel lines, that these are in fact parallel lines. Okay, the last one along this line, that's 125 and 65, right? And what kind of angles are those? Consecutive interior or same side interior. And they're supposed to be equal or have a sum of 180? 180. So do they add to 180? Do they? No. They do not equal 180, right? So I'm going to make a not equals mark there. Because they don't equal 180, that means that these lines are not parallel. Okay, any questions there about the type of work that they're asking you to do there? Okay, now let's look at a couple like kind of more problems that we're going to be asked to do. I see a couple still writing, so I'm going to wait just a minute. Okay. So our directions to these problems are going to read like this. Find x so that line A is parallel to line B. And state the reason. And by stating the reason, what we're really meaning is state what kind of angles are they that qualifies you to use the equation that you're going to use. So number 1. 10x minus 23 and 137 degrees. I know you can't see what I'm writing. I'm waiting for you guys to finish that one problem. Okay, so looking at number 1 there then. These two angles that they gave me information about, what angle pair are those? Alternate interior. And alternate interior angles, if we do have parallel lines, are they congruent or add to 180? Congruent. So that's what you're going to use to write an equation to solve for x. Okay, so go ahead and solve for x. So what are we getting? So we're getting x equals 16? Okay. So it's a lot like the work we did last week. It's just that the directions are a little bit different. And we just have to think about it kind of backwards. This, if it asks for a reason, this is what you're going to write, is the type of angle that allows you to set that equation the way you did. Okay, number 2, copy that one down. So what angle pair are these? Corresponding? And then what do you know about corresponding angles? Are they congruent or do they add to 180? They are congruent. So that means if we want to use that information to solve for x, these should have A's and B's on them, our parallel lines, are the ones that we're trying to make parallel. But that's going to be your equation. 74 equals 9x plus 11. Solve that for x. So it looks like we should be getting x equals 7. You guys good with that? Okay, so 3 and 4 why don't you set up the equations that would go with each of these. Don't solve it, but just set up the equations and give me kind of the reason why you can set up that equation. I think I think those worksheets are Algebra 1 ones that we could throw in the drawer.
Yeah, these ones are.
Yeah, you want to just throw them in the drawer?
Yeah.
Those are all the extras. Because I'll forget to put them away. I just saw you over there. I just saw you straightening them out. I thought, oh, might as well just put them away. Otherwise, my Algebra 2 kids are going to grab them tomorrow morning.
Yeah, they will. I'm like, this is easy.
Okay, so for number 3, these two angles here, what kind of angles are they? Consecutive, interior, or we could say same side interior. And are those congruent, or do they add to 180? They add to 180. So the equation here would be 96 plus 6x minus 30 equals 180. Then we can finish solving that. So it would be 66 plus 6x equals 180, because we're combining these two like terms. Then subtract 66 from both sides. So 6x equals 114. Divides both sides by 6, and x equals 19. Okay, and then number 4, what kind of angles are those ones? Alternate exterior. Are they equal, or do they add to 180? They are equal. So you're going to have 33 equals 7x plus 5. Subtract 5 from both sides. So 7x equals 28. And then divide both sides by 7. So there you should get x equals 4. Okay, any questions there? Looking around, I see some of you without masks on. We should have them on. Just a reminder. Someday we'll be able to get rid of them. Okay, any questions on those? Okay. What? So as you're copying these down, what I want you to do is just set up the equation and then give the reason why. Why you can set the equation up this way. Don't solve them yet. Just want to make sure we get their equations set up right, and then I'll give you time to solve them. Okay, so let's start with number 5. So these two angles, what kind of angle pair are they? Corresponding. And should they be equal or add to 180? Congruent. So the equation is going to be 8x minus 17 equals 5x plus 19. I'll give you a chance to go back and solve these after we get them all the equations down. So number 6, what kind of angle pair are those? Consecutive exterior or same side exterior. And are they equal or do they add to 180? They add to 180. So your equation is going to be 12x minus 29 plus 4x plus 1 equals 180. And then number 7, what kind of angles are these? Alternate interior. They equal or add to 180? Okay. Okay, so now go back and solve each of those equations for x. So number 5 should be 12, number 6 should be 13, and number 7 should be 21. So for these last 3, all I want you to do is set up the equation and then tell me why you were able to set up the equation. What angle pair do you have? We just put two of them at a time. It's too little, I think, if I try to put all three, right? So there's 8 and 9. Once I see that most of you have get that done, then I'll slide it on up. So write what angle pair you can use and what the equation would be. So number 8 would be corresponding, so we could set them equal to each other. What about number 9? Alternate exterior. So we're going to set them equal to each other. And then number 10, consecutive interior angles, so they add to 180. Okay, and you don't have to solve those. So there is a homework assignment on Google Classroom. Make sure you look at, you don't have to do all the problems. Make sure you look at the board. It also says on Google Classroom which ones you need to do.